Don't go to your grave with your life experiences trapped in here or in here. In this episode, I'm going to address how to capture, record a life sketch and family memories in less than 90 minutes. This is important because if you wait too long, one's experiences will go to their grave with them. You don't want to have that regret. So I'm Doug Andrew. I've been helping many thousands of people not only optimize their financial assets, but actually the most important assets that they value, they possess, they cherish. And that oftentimes is the learning experiences, the wisdom they gain throughout their life. Wisdom is a product of knowledge times experiences, both good and bad, that helped shape you to who you are. And so many times people who do not capture those, they get lost after you go to your grave, okay? And so the purpose of this episode is to share with you how you can capture some of that in as little as 90 minutes. I'm going to give you several examples here, so stay with me. And I'm going to gift you a copy of my book at the end that'll help you understand how to do this and why this is so powerful, and why it's far more important that you leave behind knowledge and attitudes and skills and habits from real life stories instead of just money to your heirs. Because that will run out, I assure you, if you do it the way most people do with a trust where it gets dumped in their laps, okay? So here we go. I want to explain how to capture memories and how you can use some tools that I've developed, because I've done this hundreds of times for people before they have a stroke and lose it. And I want you to do this before you forget, or maybe your parents or even grandparents, okay? This is how I started capturing life sketches. My mother passed away at age 67. And my dad was very lonely, and within a short time period, he remarried a wonderful lady who had lost two previous husbands, one to leukemia and one to a stroke. And they enjoyed 17 years together. It was incredible. But my dad, shortly after that, began to fall a lot, and he had a back surgery, and the nerves didn't regenerate. And the neurologist and the orthopedic said, you know, Glenn, his name was Glenn, give into a wheelchair. Now, he refused for 17 years to give into a wheelchair. You know why? Because my brother, Sherm, and I began to realize, you know what? We are going to spend a day with Dad, one day a month. And we will regret it if we don't do this. And our mother, even though she was a stepmother, she wasn't anything like a normal type of a stepmother. We endeared her like our own mother. And she says, you literally extended your father's life by having these once a month dates. So we would go into his pantry and we would circle the Friday that we were going to come the next month and the next month after that to build up anticipation. And she would say that sometimes for a week or two, he didn't even have any motivation to get out of bed. But on the days prior to Sherman and I showing up to go to lunch or dinner, spend the day with our dad, he would get this amazing renewing of his body. And he didn't want to be a burden on us. And he would greet us at the door at 7 in the morning with his white cardigan sweater, ready to go spend the day with his sons. And he didn't want us to be a burden. He would use a walker. He refused to give into a wheelchair, and he used a walker because he had to lock his leg every time he took a step so he wouldn't fall. We went out and we had breakfast and then lunches, and we started talking about all the memories. And I began to realize these are golden moments. I need to capture these. So I began to record them audio, and then I began to record them video. And then we actually had some times where we invited my dad to come and be interviewed on camera for 2 or 3 hours, and our kids, his grandkids, asked him questions that I never dared ask him. Grandpa, did you ever kiss on your first date? Did you ever get in a fight? And so forth. And I learned some things that I never knew about my dad. But see, they were jogging his memory with these questions. And we captured all of them. So my wife and I trapped my dad and his wife, our second mother, in Maui for a week. And I said, Dad, before we go to dinner every night, you are going to sit down here and you're going to read these questions, and you will push record, and you will record the answer off the cuff. And if you feel so inclined, you can start writing. Now, he had never written much of anything, okay? I was away on a religious mission in Korea for 2 years, and I don't recall receiving very many letters, but I did come home from Korea with 104 cassette tapes. You may not know what that is, but he knew how to talk. So I let him just talk the answers, and then he started writing. He never stopped writing after that trip to Maui. But what did I do on that trip to Maui? I gave him one sheet of paper, and these are memory joggers. Now, before I share with you the categories of the questions, if this is intriguing to you, I want you to subscribe to this channel. And when you push that button subscribe, click the little bell also, because then you'll be notified every time I post a new concept like this on this channel, which I love to do. I do it almost on a daily basis. And you can click like, post a comment, share with somebody else that you think would benefit from this. But stay to the end. I want to gift you a copy of a book that will help you understand this, and you'll be able to download worksheets like this, okay? This is the memory jogger exercise that I've used many, many times. But with my dad, the first day, I had him answer questions about his ancestry, okay? When and where were you born, and what were your parents' names? Briefly tell us about your ancestry and unusual circumstances and blah, 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 your first job and what have you. Then we went in the next day on early childhood. And how many brothers and sisters, and 2 or 3 fond memories. What schools did you attend? What was your favorite subject, your favorite teacher, and so forth. And then, who had a significant impact in your life? The next day was the courtship years with our mother, our maternal biological mother. And why did you fall in love with her? And what did you appreciate? And so forth. And so we got through the courtship years first, and then the next day was the actual early married life and early child rearing years. So that took us through day 4. And then the next day, he was talking about the empty nester stage of life when his 6 children were now out on their own, and they were empty nesters, and what they did and their priorities and what have you, and some of the memories. And then we went into church service, and then professional and community service, and what made him tick, why did he believe in these things and what have you. And then there's other questions and topics like what's worth sacrificing for, what's worth dying for, what's worth working hard or preserving or remembering, and at the end of the day, what do you want your kids and grandkids to know about you and what you stand for and so forth. And so I learned how to ask these questions, but in 1 week, I ended up with 150 pages of information. I inserted photos, and we ended up with a book, The Life of My Father, that we were able to, at his funeral, distribute 250 copies to family and friends of the book, the audio, the video, and that will be watched and rewatched for generations. That's more valuable than if every child and grandchild had inherited $250,000 of CASH, because we captured the KASH, knowledge, attitude, skills, habits, the memories. Is this making sense? So let me share with you one point. A few years ago, I was in charge in our church of widows, widowers, empty nesters. And so I started this as a tradition. We would gather together one evening a month, and this was for empty nesters, and I would actually interview one of them. We conducted dozens of interviews over 5 years, and sometimes the best interviews were with no preparation. Sometimes they wanted to know and circle the questions they wanted me to ask, and that was fine, and they could rehearse it. But the best ones actually were just off the cuff. And so I would sit down, and I would have either a video camera and or an audio recorder, and you can do this on your phone, and you just go through and ask these questions. And so I would start asking these questions in front of 30 people, and And some of their adult children would come, and they were shocked. They would always say, I've never heard 60% of these stories. In fact, they would share some of them at their funeral when they finally passed away. But then when we would transcribe them, and it was in 90 minutes, I would capture a life sketch, and then they would be motivated to write more or whatever. But you transcribe it, and that was cherished for generations. And all I had to do was just ask the questions. And I heard stories like you wouldn't believe. I heard stories of how these saintly women would go skinny dipping when their husbands were out hunting, okay? In our neighborhood, they were swimming naked in their backyard, and we all, what? These saintly women were skinny dipping? And I heard another one where one of the men, he came home from the Navy, but 30 days before he came home, he sent his friend, who was in the Navy, to deliver a message to his girlfriend. And when he did, he said, ooh, yeah, she's cute. And so he started dating her, and he wanted to pop the question before his buddy got home. And his buddy heard about it, and his buddy, he didn't know anything else, and he resorted back to something he used to do when he was a teenager that wasn't very good. He went to the cemetery first thing when he got off the plane and stole a bouquet of flowers somebody had just put on a grave, and he went to his girlfriend and proposed with this bouquet of flowers. She was so impressed, she said, oh, I'm going to marry you. Well, he had never confessed that act until I interviewed him. He needed to get it off his chest. Yeah, there's a lot of stories that you'll capture that most people have never heard of, even their own children. So the message here is you want to capture them while they have the wherewithal. You don't want to wait until your mother or father or grandmother has another stroke, then they won't be able to remember. You will have absolutely unacceptable regrets if you do that. So if you want the tools to be able to jog their memories and to be able to ask questions and have them off the cuff, just give the answers, it will be golden, I assure you. I have done this dozens of times, and the children always thank me profusely. So if you want to learn how to do this, here's how you can claim a free copy of my book, Entitlement, Abolition. You simply go to entitlementabolitionbook.com or click on the link below, and you contribute a nominal amount toward the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that cost, and I'll pay for the book. This is 200 pages. It retails for $20. You don't have to pay that. I'll fire out a hard copy to you, but there's options there if you like to listen and learn or watch and learn. I even recorded an 18-hour masterclass on video that does a deep dive on how to implement these ideas. But this is about you. And this is just one idea in this book about how to capture those things that if you leave them in your heart or in your mind and they go to your grave with you, how sad will that be? You need to capture them and pass them on to future generations into perpetuity.